Hello and welcome again to another exciting episode of the Terry McGriff Show. Just a lovely, lovely day to be alive. Sitting here in North Florida, waiting for this tropical storm to come our way in a couple of days, and just going to chill out and have you guys enjoy some good sports talk along with my illustrious co-host Andre L. Sullivan. Andre, how you doing, my friend?
Man, I don't know what decided to attack me. But I sound like this. I promise y'all I'm not doing drugs that y'all know of. And so I just feel like, it's going to be a good show irregardless. So let's go.
You're going to do one of them Michael Jordan performances. You're going to perform under the illness, and it's going to be one of your best shows. I don't know, man, because sometimes when you get those bugs and things that can attack you, you tend to push through and do your best work sometimes. It'd be like that.
I ain't claiming Michael Jordan, but I'm going to claim Andre L. Sullivan, and that's what all I can do. You feel me?
You're going to put that Andre L. Sullivan touch on this, okay? And let's make it do what it do. But we do got a pretty good show for it today. I wanted to talk about some stuff. I was looking at a couple of things, and I know they were talking about, I got a little email about buying some Hall of Fame gear from some of these guys that we knew, getting ready to get inducted into the Hall. And just got me to thinking about some of the players that are been getting snubbed, not just recently, but for a long, long, long time. So we wanted to just kind of do a show based on, who are some of the greatest players. I put together in my own set of criteria a team that I think would go out there and play against any Hall of Fame team. And I think these guys could play with anybody. Obviously, they're not all household names, but these were guys I think that should be in the Hall of Fame for various reasons. And I'm not talking about people who we like, but not players that I feel good about. I think these people actually deserve a shot, and some of them been talked about it, and some of them just in that long line of people that haven't, they just been able to get in yet. So we'll talk about those guys, and then we're going to finish our continue our series on the different divisions, and we'll head on into the NFC Eastern division this week, and we'll talk about them. But before we get started, let's talk about our friends over there at She-Car and Watch Game Film and Team Sports Rhetoric, along with the Women's Tackle Football League, who just so happened to finish their regular season. And getting ready for the playoffs, along with Laces Out Foundation and the DEMP Project, they're all doing some wonderful, wonderful things. I hope that you had a good, happy Independence Day weekend. Hopefully you wasn't under the weather for that, but we had that. Now we're getting ready for the dog days of summer, and this is kind of a slow time in the NBA, but we got some good stuff coming up. We got the Olympics coming up, all them Olympic trials we've been watching, and the finals start tomorrow since we're recording this. No, the finals are tonight. It is Tuesday. The finals start tonight. We have the Phoenix Suns against the Milwaukee Bucks. It's going to be interesting to see if Giannis actually plays. What do you think about that? Do you think Giannis is going to play, or are you going to sit it out?
I mean, it's the finals. I don't see them unless he's not medically cleared. Giannis will be on the court.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so too. This is between him and Chris Paul to get the chance to cement their legacy. I really don't know who to even pull for. I'm pulling for both of them because they both are deserving. I mean, if you had to go by, okay, who's closer to the end? Yeah, you say you hope Chris Paul can get this because he'll be retiring soon, and Giannis still might have a chance somewhere along the line. But you never know, injuries, all those type of things. So, but let's get into this. Like I said, let's get into this NFL Hall of Fame discussion. Like I said, I really was thinking about some people that I thought that should deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, but not just that. I was like, could I put together a team of guys who are not in the Hall of Fame and be competitive with a Hall of Fame team? And I think I came up with some guys that I know that can play with anybody, and they're not in for various reasons. And some of them, give you an example, are just because they were at the wrong place at the wrong time. But most of the criteria for most of these teams, these guys had to be not only a great player, but they had to also be contributed on a pretty good team. And I think I did a pretty good job with that. Did you? I don't know if you got a chance to make a list, but if you didn't, you can comment on mine.
I'm not even doing a list. I got 3 players.
Oh, okay.
3 that just, you know what I'm saying? That just.
But since yours is shorter than mine, let me hear what you got. I want to go. We're going to knock that out.
All right, cool. No problem with me because all of mine were born right here in Florida.
Okay.
One right here in Jacksonville, Florida.
I already know who you're talking about. He's on my list too.
But I'm gonna start off with the low hanging fruit because I'm a Jaguar fan and I feel some type of way. Fred Taylor should have been had a gold jacket. And just I'm just not even gonna try to sugarcoat that. He should have been had a gold jacket. You telling me somebody with 2,534 rushes, over 10,000 rushing yards, total touchdowns in career, and that's just rushing, not receiving touchdowns. Is not in the Hall of Fame. I mean, it's simply because he wore a Jacksonville Jaguar jersey for most of his career. And I don't understand why he's not in a yellow jacket yet. I mean, of course, again, it's because he had a Jacksonville Jaguar jersey on, and not a lot of the world did not get to see what Fred Taylor do unless the Jacksonville Jaguars went into the playoffs, or unless the Jaguars. Well, he was the Jaguar selection for the Pro Bowl, and that's cool. I get it. Whatever. Small market stuff,
that's small market team excuse. That's what everybody uses for him.
Exactly, but that's fine. Next up is the person that he sits with almost every other week on their podcast, and that's none other than Chad Johnson.
Ocho, okay.
A lot of people have a problem with Chad Johnson. He put a Hall of Fame jacket on himself during his playing days. But guess what? He did it because y'all wasn't gonna do it for him. I mean, listen. I'm sorry. There are receivers in the Hall of Fame right now. Matter of fact, no. There are DBs who are in the Hall of Fame right now who could not stop Chad Johnson.
I totally agree. Probably the quickest first step in NFL history from a wide receiver. Some of the quickest feet ever.
And you're telling me on a consistent basis, on a year in, year out basis, this man put in work. This man put. I'm not even going to go into his stats, but I will. I'm sorry. 67 total touchdowns receiving, 766 receiving receptions, 11,059 receiving yards. 166 games played. Come on, people. Come on, listen. I mean, I get it. He did it all while not shutting up. But who could shut him up? I mean, like literally, who could shut him up? If you want to shut up, Chad told you, if you want me to shut up, stop me. A lot of people don't know this, but Chad Johnson and Rasheed Matthews are really, really good friends. Just on a personal level, not in the sports world. Personal level. They've met on the field. Because Rasheed Matthews is one of the few people who could handle Chad Johnson. And when they played against each other, he shut up. Why did he shut up? Because he stopped him. But I digress. My last one, and certainly not least, young man born right here in Jacksonville, Florida. He was a safety in the NFL. Played for the Packers.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
From 1990 to 2001. None other than Mr. Leroy Butler. Listen here. Why is this man not in the Hall of Fame?
There's no excuse for that one. There's no excuse for that one. There's not even to have a long discussion on that. The NFL has it 100% wrong when it comes to him. He should have already been in 22. He should be in on this next ballot. This should be before you put anybody else's name on there, especially at the defensive back position, he needs to be the first one to get a gold jacket going into the class of 2022.
Like, you're really telling me somebody with 38 interceptions, 889 tackles, 20 and a half sacks, 13 forced fumbles, 10 fumble recoveries over his career does not deserve to wear a yellow jacket?
Mm-hmm. Yep, you're right.
Like, I'm not even a stat person. I'm not. I really don't like using stats to prove a point, but come on.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, like.
Mm-hmm.
But I digress. Those are my three. I didn't want to go into the whole thing because if those weren't mentioned, I was going to be upset.
Gotcha. And now I did my team based on some other criteria with that, but to mention those guys, and especially, I mean, it's kind of hard to mention Fred Taylor in that era without mentioning another dynamic player on that roster that should be in the Hall of Fame, Jimmy Smith. Jimmy Smith, probably next to Chad Johnson, was in his day, and at least in a Greek, he came to Jacksonville after 1996. There's hard pressed to find any receiver in the NFL during his day who was a better deep threat than Jimmy Smith. He was feared even by the great Deion Sanders. You know, there was nobody that could actually stop him one-on-one for most part. He was a different type of receiver than Chad Johnson, but he was just as deadly, if not deadlier, when it comes to especially going deep on people. And he was always clutch when they needed him. So he was one of the people that I would go in there. But he didn't make my team because there's a long list of receivers still waiting to get in the NFL Hall of Fame that I think are deserving, just as Jimmy Smith and Chad Johnson are, that didn't get in. So I only put in some guys that I think they were very overdue to add them on my list. So I'll start with I did some and two quarterbacks. One guy that deserves to be in there, and for whatever reason, because I think he came in at the wrong from the Cincinnati Bengals. He was the original quarterback of the West Coast offense when they put it in Cincinnati, when the Bengals took over and started running the West Coast offense. He led the Bengals to a Super Bowl, obviously losing to the 49ers. But he had a great career, one of the best. I remember a couple of years, he led the league in passing percentage. I mean, completion percentage. He was able to help Bill Walsh really fine tune that offense before he took it to the 49ers. And so he deserves to be in there. I don't know why he's not in. The other one I put in at quarterback was if circumstances and the times of the day, he would have gotten the numbers. He went through a similar thing, such as Lord have mercy, as Warren Moon, but I think he had to bear more of the brunt of it. And he was the first, and I'll say everybody know, he was the first black quarterback to start in the Super Bowl, and win a Super Bowl. Doug Williams, his overall career professionally, what he did when he was with the Buccaneers, along with the USFL, and what he did in completing it with the Redskins, he deserves to be in, because what he able to do in a lot of the part, one of the reasons they say a person goes in the Hall of Fame from what they do to change the game. Well, his game and his performance in the Super Bowl opened up a lot of owners' eyes to know that black men could lead their team to the championship. And so, if nothing but that alone, that's why I believe it. And his overall career, what he did while he was playing, was good enough, because people forget that he did lead the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to 2 NFC Championship games. So if people forgot about that with the Buccaneers, but after when they were really totally trashed until he came there, they were trash. So people forget that part of his career too. And the only reason he didn't stick around the Buccaneers because their owner was cheap and didn't want to pay him. He was paid lower than every other starting quarterback in the NFL only because of the color of his skin. Now we're gonna go to the running back selection, and I got two. I got three of them that I just can't go without, and there's a ton of them that go in. There's a ton of honorable mention guys that could be in the Hall of Fame. But my three we've already spoken of the great Fred Taylor. You know what I mean? I'm going by not just what his stats is, but what my eyes at and what the great Jim Brown said. He was the most talented running back that he's seen play the position since he played. You know what I mean? Fred Taylor had it all: size, speed, moves, all that. There's nothing Fred couldn't do and didn't do on the field. He just so happened. If he'd have been on the Dallas Cowboys, he'd have been a first ballot Hall of Famer. You know what I mean? Period. Another guy kind of in the same boat with him was the great, and I don't call him Otis, I'm going to call him what he was when he came out of University of Miami and did all them great things under the radar, the great O.J. Anderson. And what he did when he was with the St. Louis Cardinals, and then the way he finished off his career with the New York Giants. He was a similar back to Fred Taylor, a big back that had size, speed. And the thing what he did as he got older, he changed his game from being that elusive speed home run hitting back that he was with the Cardinals to becoming that power back and possession back and getting you in the end zone and short yardage back that he did with the Giants. And everybody remembers he won. People don't remember he won 2 Super Bowl rings. He helped the Giants get one in '86 and then turned around in 1990, led them on what was the longest scoring drive in Super Bowl history. And helped win that because of that possession of that drive, was able to keep the Bills off the field long enough for them to actually win that game. So the great O.J. Anderson, not Otis, he's O.J. to me. I know it's 2 O.J.'s, Simpson and Anderson, but Anderson was another great back that should be in the Hall of Fame for what he look at his career. Don't worry about the city he played for. And another totally ridiculously NFL, you're so stupid that you didn't get this one down first. And I'm gonna call you out. How the heck? No, not how the heck. How the hell you ain't got Roger Craig in the Hall of Fame right now? The first and only running back right now in the history that I know of, some stats I ain't seen, that have 1,000 yards rushing and 1,000 yards receiving in the same year. Who has done that? How many? 3 Super Bowl rings? Come on, man. Was the heart and soul of the running game. Was one of the reasons him and Eric Dickerson, the only one that actually injured defensive players by the way they ran the ball with those high knees. So Roger Craig is get it right, NFL. Get that man in there. Get him his jacket. Couple of these guys, maybe a little bit before your time. We're gonna move on to the tight end position that people don't know. I mean, if you know anything about from like old school football from the '80s on up, and the great Keith Jackson from ABC Sports used to talk about the great Hall of Fame college and pro tight end. Oh, Keith Jackson from University of Oklahoma, played with the Philadelphia Eagles, the Green Bay Packers. Thank God he was able to get him a Super Bowl there and almost got him one with the Dolphins. He was one of the best tight ends of his day. But because, that era he played in, and he made several Pro Bowls and All Pros, he's kind of just fell under the radar, the Keith Jackson. And then the other one that's kind of fallen under the radar because I think he was just on a couple of great teams and in a great era was the great Todd Christensen, one of the earlier day prototype tight ends as far as receiving tight ends. He was really good, and he kind of stood out because he wore that number 46. And I'm from Florida, and we used to remember how that guy was. And I mean, he made Pro Bowl year in, year out. How he didn't get in against some of these other guys. He was. I mean, you look at some of these Hall of Fame tight ends. That's who they said they patterned. I mean, I remember what was his name with Kansas City? What's the old tight end that just won the Hall of Fame? Gonzalez. He said he patterned his game after. I mean, Christensen. He liked the way he would get open like a receiver. So how is he not in? The other one, let's go to wide receivers. I'm only going to stick to 2 because there's so many, and we already talked about a couple that deserve to be in. I'm going to talk about a guy who was one of the original, I call it OG's original deep threats. And out of that, the Raiders, all they like to do is go deep. So Cliff Branch, and you look at his numbers, he wasn't in a time where they actually really ran the ball a lot. And he was their deep threat, and he actually got open a lot. And underneath, he was one of the toughest little guys, too. And he's got a couple of Super Bowl rings and I think 3 Super Bowl appearances. How he's not gotten voted in is another travesty. And I know Brett Favre is banging down the door for this guy, Sterling Sharp. How Sterling Sharp was, I mean, he was one of the prototype guys of his day. With that crazy face mask and stuff like that. But all he did was he was the offense. He was the passing game with Brett Favre when he was there before that unfortunate injury. So that's one of the other guys. All right, let's move on to the offensive line. And I tried to keep it short and simple because there's another lot of guys that people don't know about, and especially older school guys. So we're trying to keep it relevant for our time. So I try to get guys that I know really deserve it. We're gonna stay here locally. Everybody know he been to like the last four finals and just ain't got in. But Tony Baselli was one of the great tackles of his time. You know what I mean? And he deserves to be in. You know, and I think he's waited long enough. But even more deserving than him, in my opinion, especially for what he did helping his team win multiple Super Bowls and get into multiple other championships and Super Bowls, was the great Joe Jacoby of the Washington Redskins, not the Washington football team, the Washington Joe Jacoby, and he was the prototype man. He was a giant of his day, and wearing that number 66. And remember, they used to do the tackle. You know, before them, there wasn't no tackles pulling. You know, you always had pulling guards, but they used to do the counter trade with both tackles pulling, this backside tackle, and he was able to get around the corner and do all those things. He was just a monster of a lineman, and he should be in the Hall of Fame. The great Joe Jacoby. Now, here's a couple of guys that you may have not heard of. We're going to at the guard position. But I grew up watching this guy before we had the Jaguars for the Miami Dolphins. The great Bob Kuechenberg played decades, won on not only several Pro Bowls, but several All-Pro teams. And how you got some of these newer guys that got in before Bob Kuechenberg, and God Kuechenberg got his one Super Bowl rings. So sometimes you're the victim of not having that media push and being in the social media age, because you got a lot of younger guys have gotten in since before him, and he should have been in. The other one is a great player, another great guard on a couple of Super Bowl champions that was behind one, kind of like Cliff Branch, that kind of got caught up in the wash of being on a great team, but he was a great player. Without him, those guys would never got anything done. The great Randy Cross playing guard. He was one of the and he could play center too. Randy Cross with the 49ers. Here's somebody you didn't know. I was going to talk about Mark Stepnoski here, but everybody knows about Step and all those guys for the Dallas Cowboys, and they'll get in because they play for the Cowboys, and they're going to be a big push. But nobody really talked about the great Jay Hilgenberg, the center of those great Chicago Bear teams of the 80s and early 90s, because the years he was there, I mean, the Bears were leading the league in rushing with Walter Payton. And then when Walter left, Neil Anderson, they still became playoff teams behind the people like Jay Hilgenberg and all those great offensive linemen that the Chicago Bears did. And he was, of his time, he was the best center, period. Hands down, he was the best center. And why Jay Hilgenberg for the Bears is not in is because of the lack of, once again, you got all these other Hall guys that made it into the Hall or getting Hall of Fame talk over him. So that's my theory on that. Let's go to the defense. Some of these are the same way. When you look at their numbers even stack up now. He was the first overall pick in the NFL draft. Was a Pro Bowler, All Pro guy. Helped his team get to a couple Super Bowl wins, and stopped football to go box. And came back at the same high quality Pro Bowl, All Pro level when he came back from boxing. That is the great Ed Too Tall Jones. How he not in, and he with Dallas. That's he's in that same book of all these other guys that are. I don't know what was the problem, because remember Drew Pearson finally got in after that. It was like I think there was a lot of hate for the Cowboys with the media with some of these guys back then, but he didn't get in. Jeff Coates not in for the Cowboys. There's a couple other guys. And almost like, I'll give you another one that I don't put on my list, but he should be in the great L.C. Greenwood of the Steelers back in the 70s. If you know anything about the steroid era, he's probably the poster child of the steroid era. But when he played, whether you call it he had steroids or whatever, he played defensive end and defensive tackle. He was one of the great defensive linemen of his day. Lyle Alzado played with the Browns, the Broncos on that Orange Crush defense that the Broncos had, and then he got a Super Bowl with the Los Angeles. Well, I think it was still the Los Angeles Raiders at that time. And then here's one that makes you scratch your head. How this man is the first guy to lead this league in sacks in back-to-back years. The first man to have 20-plus sacks in a season, and he's not in the Hall of Fame. How is Mark Gastineau not in the Hall of Fame? And somebody would have to look me in and give me a legitimate reason. And he's in a media heaven. He's in New York. And everybody knew all about the Sack Exchange. If you're younger, you might even heard of the Sack Exchange. And along with his, and it's kind of hard to go Mark Gastineau without saying his other cohort, and that was who could play defensive end, nose guard, and three. He played 4-3, he played 3-4, he played nose guard in the 3-4, he played defensive end in the 3-4, and he played the 3 and the 1, and every position on the defensive line. I'll just put it that way. The great Joe Klecko. How those two they were the two main members of the New York Sack Exchange. In a year, check this number out. That year, I forgot what year, I think it was, want to say 82, they had 66 sacks as a defense. 66. Now, put that together in your mind. And there's neither one of them in the Hall of Fame. And last but not least, I mean, he's had a great post-life career and post-career and television and all that, but he was on he got a championship ring with the New York Giants. I know he's way before most of that, but most people know him from TV, the great Rosie Greer from the Fearsome Foursome. But before that, he was a great player with the New York Giants and got a championship in the greatest game ever played. So I don't know if you know who Rosie Greer is, but he's a great, great player. Let's move over to linebackers. Let's go somebody I think I know you know a little bit about. And he started his career because he was undersized. He ended up in the USFL. Then he went to the, after that USF breakup, he went to the New Orleans Saints and then on to the Carolina Panthers, the great Sam Mills. I mean, all-pro year in, year out on some of the best, the leader of some of the best defense that the NFL has, and he's not in. Another guy you may not know because he's a little bit before your time, but he was one of my favorites watching growing up. Linebacker Randy Gradishaw from the Denver Broncos. They call him from the Orange Crest defense, and he was a leader of that defense. Another guy that you probably don't know of, I'm going to go a little bit old, Tommy Novus, old school, did it all linebacker from back in the day in the 70s. You may not know who that is, but you might want to get a chance to look him up. He was one of his, if you go back in the day, I loved to watch him play. And if you look at some of the old school linebackers, he was their hero. He's one of the guys. He's one of the great building blocks of the game. You know how the younger generation say, I grew up watching this guy. Well, you know, the people like Sam Mills and the people that are in the Hall of Fame now say, we grew up watching this guy. And another guy, last but not least, at the linebacker position that I cannot believe that's not in, and just was a mainstay on the Cleveland Browns defense for years, was the great Clay Matthews Sr. at linebacker. How he's not in the Hall of Fame because he's got several all-pro appearances, not just Pro Bowl, but all-pro. This ought to make you laugh right here. Can somebody please tell me, we're going to move to cornerbacks. Please tell me why Lester Hayes ain't in the Hall of Fame.
Man, we'll be all day trying to figure that out.
I mean, how many times did he lead the league in interceptions? I mean, come on. He was one of the guys that when you first started talking about lockdown corners, he was the poster child. Got Super Bowl championships, got resume galore. How he's not in. And then another people that he goes under the radar. He was on one of those great Bengals teams of the early '80s, the great Ken Riley. I mean, and he had a long, illustrious career. And I mean, talking about years where he lives in a row where he led the league in interceptions. And not only that, years he ran like 4 interceptions back for touchdowns. Come on, bro. And I mean, if you're going to give Deion Sanders his prop for running highlights back and him running interceptions back, Ken Riley was doing that before Deion Sanders even made it into the league. But like I said, that was pre-social media, so he kind of gets slow up under the rug. We're going to move on to safety. And this is where you and I agreed on. Leroy Butler was, and I try not to steal your thunder, but Leroy Butler was probably strong safety, free safety, could play anything, cornerback, could play linebacker. He was Ed Reed, Troy Polamalu, all of them before they even hit the scene. He was, they probably learned turn their gap after him. And how he's not in with the stats and the Pro Bowl accolades he got. And last but not least, I didn't want to do any special teams guys because that's too much of a specialty. And you're not, to me, you outside of Steve Tasker, I didn't see any special teams guys that, so I'll give Tasker an honorable mention there. But safety wise, this guy was the king of intimidation. Everybody that came on after him was trying to, even Ronnie Lott even tell you, got kind of painting the game after the great Jack Tatum. Jack Tatum was putting guys in the hospital, ending guys' career. And that's probably one of the reasons, because of the way his viciousness of his hits. But how Jack Tatum is not in the Hall of Fame, I don't get it. So I'll take your comments. If you got anybody you want to say, I think I might have missed, or you got any comments on anybody you think I'll put that team up against any team.
No, I mean, this was actually really, really good. I'm not gonna lie. I'm surprised you didn't put Hines Ward up there.
Well, I mean, Hines Ward was a great receiver, and that's why I say it was too many. I could have went.
I know.
I could have went Reggie Wayne. I could have went Torrey Holt. I mean, and the thing about it is, what I was trying to keep in mind. I'll stop and explain. First of all, number one, you had to help basically be. If you didn't make it on a championship team, you had to be really, really, really special in your area. And most of these guys, anyway, were already on one championship somewhere along the line. But a lot of the times, I pick guys who weren't in the social media era of football. Like a lot of these guys can do self-promote. Those guys couldn't do self-promote. Most of those guys also were in the pre-free agency era. They couldn't just leave and go for a better situation. They were stuck where they were. You get what I'm saying? And they made the best of it. And then, like I said, in the case of Doug Williams, I mean, the guy, come on, man, the guy had to go through hell through his career to accomplish what he accomplished. If you look at his story, I mean, it was just he out of all the black quarterbacks that had to go through us, they all did at that time. I mean, when you think about Vince Evans and a couple of those guys, I forgot his name. I can't even remember his name. He was a quarterback of the Steelers. There's tons of people say he was much better quarterback than Terry Bradshaw, but because of color of skin, he didn't get to start Terry Bradshaw. Plus, they spent a first-round pick on Bradshaw. Now, I don't know that, but that was just the time. Even Warren Moon had to go to Canada before he came back. You know what I mean? It was just the time. I mean, I could even put in Randall Cunningham, because he's deserving for what are the things that he put excitement in the quarterback position when he came along. He was Michael Vick before Michael Vick. You know, he was Monday Night Football highlight reel. I mean, you wanted to see what he did. I mean, and when he played. So there's a lot of those guys, but there was special criteria. And a lot of these guys, like I said, are deserving to get in, but politics and, times when they came out and got done playing was really some of the reasons why a lot of these guys ain't in there. And so people really probably need to have their clubs pushing them more than they do. And some of them are not.
Agreed.
So anybody else? Because you gave me only one defensive player. Anybody else you thinking?
No, I mean, like I said, your list was actually really, really done well. But no, most of that, I'm still not a big Tony Baselli pusher.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I get it. But no, other than that, your list was done really well.
I mean, it was going to be Tony Baselli. The other guy, and I forgot to mention him, but I was trying to keep the list so we didn't go too long. There's another guy who's labored, but he labored on a lot of teams that were bad to mediocre. But he did have a couple of chances where he went to the NFC Championship. Was the great Lomas Brown, and I was trying not to be a Gator homer again with that. So Lomas Brown has played like 16 years. I want to say 12, 13 Pro Bowls, about 8 or 9 All-Pro teams. So I'll give him a mention because he should be in the Hall of Fame, man. He's not. I mean, he blocked for, Barry Sanders and Billy Sims. I mean, some great players, and he's not. And like I said, the wide receiver list, especially with the passing game now, is a little too long to kind of say. And that's probably why Jimmy Smith keeps getting pushed back farther and farther and farther back. And like I said, Ocho ain't got in yet. And Ocho was a self-promoter, and he's still not in. And I mean, I would make if you put my buddy T.O. in there. T.O. and Ocho were neck and neck when it called popularity in the day. How could you put T.O. in and not put Ocho in? You get what I'm saying? Because they were the main self-promoters during that time. And, their numbers were similar. And actually, toward the end of that, Ocho were on better teams with the Bengals than he was with the 49ers. So, and he became a kind of nomad, jumping from team to team to team at toward the tail end of his career. So it is what it is. So that's my team. Like I said, I'll put that team against line up any other 22 people and let's go play and see what happens. And I'd be pretty confident in there, because when you start looking at the play of my guys, you got to deal with, especially on the defensive front, you got to deal with everybody. And who you gonna single block? I don't care who you put out there. That's gonna be hard to block. Ed Too Tall Jones coming off one end, and Martin Gastineau off the other end with Rosie Greer and Joe Klecko. I mean, that alone would I can have a Hall of Fame defense just with that front alone, and give me some mediocre guys behind that. Put them all in their prime. But by the way, there's another guy. He's younger. That I just lost the name that I didn't mention. What was he? Patrick Willis. Had a short career, but it was great. Like I said, there's so many guys that had great careers, but for reasons, whatever the reason is, these guys didn't get in, and that's kind of why I wanted to talk about it there. And Patrick Willis is one of those guys. You could kind of debate Zach Thomas. Depends on who you want to look at, but nobody can debate the greatness of what Patrick Willis did while he was playing. Like I said, there's so many guys. There's another guy. If you want to go that route, Lord, he's doing NFL Network now. Came from the Patriots. Lord have mercy, with Curly. God dog it, I can't believe it'll come to me at the end of the show, but you know what I'm talking about. Like I said, there's guys all over that should be in the NFL Hall of Fame that are right now not in the Hall of Fame. So let's go to our NFC preview here, and talk about some of these teams. Sorry, I had to look on them. Talk about some of these teams and see what we think, and who do we predict, and all those good things. I'll let you go first a little bit, because I know your voice is a little weak here.
All right, no problem. This is one of those divisions in football where you're just like, why do you all suck so bad? Like, I don't get it. Like, every single team in this division is one of those story franchises, and all of you just play crappy football, and I don't get it. I don't like you're the team who won your division last year was 7-9,
mm-hmm.
and they don't even have a mascot. I don't get it. Like, I'm sorry, but I digress. But this year, it is going to be interesting. I'll go from bottom to the top. Right now, the Giants still have a lot to figure out. Mm-hmm. They do. They kind of got a franchise quarterback. They definitely have a franchise running back if he's healthy. But they struggled throwing the ball last year. And then their defense struggled covering the pass. And I guess it's interesting about teams. The thing that they struggle doing offense is what their defense struggles with covering, because they don't see it in practice. And that's just their Achilles heel. They couldn't stop a paper plane. and it was just awful to watch. And next up, and again, all of these teams are very, very close to each other. So don't get that 4-1 ranking any kind of weight. But then I have to put on top of them the Eagles. Now the Eagles did a lot in free agency in the draft.
I know you like their first round pick.
I loved it. So 3-2 is don't they're really just 2A 2B. Mm-hmm. But What we didn't see the Eagles do was anything with their defense.
Yeah.
And I question, how are you going to stop teams? Yeah, if everything works well, this offense will look beautiful, amazing, like literally.
Yeah, but you'll be winning 45-42.
Right, you'll be in shootouts every week,
Mhm.
and it's awful to see. And then next is this Washington team. You guys put some pieces together, and I'll give it to you. But I don't know if you have enough pieces on offense. And listen, Fitzpatrick has trying to find a way to word this has defied Fitzpatrick has defied the laws of the journeyman and the backup QB.
Mhm.
But Fitzpatrick is not the long term answer. Fitzpatrick at best is a band-aid. And until you guys figure that out, you're still going to be the Washington Suckheads. And it's just going to be interesting to see how they put it together. Now, listen. Yes, they finished 6-10 last year. Yes, they struggled down the stretch. But this Cowboy team this year, of course, they will be the team on HBO Hard Knocks this year. Mentioned earlier this week, or later last week, I should say. But with a healthy Dak Prescott,
Mhm.
a healthy Ezekiel Elliott,
Mhm.
CeeDee Lamb on one side, Amari Cooper on the other.
And
And it's just going to be fun to watch.
well, they got
Period.
more than that at wide receiver. I was just gonna let you
I,
elaborate.
I,
They got like 4 or 5 good wide receivers on that team.
and that's my point. That's my point. That's just two. It's just two that I named. Like,
Mhm.
they can be switching in and out all day. But my point is, Mike McCarthy has now had time to get the team Mike McCarthy wants. Wait, just wait till you see what they do on the field.
Mhm.
Because literally, it's going to be it's going to be reminiscent of when the Cowboys just said, you know what, all right, we're going to throw across the bar, run across the bar, now stop us.
Mhm. Yeah.
No.
I feel you, and I'll just go ahead and start right there. They're the Cowboys' mind. They're an enigma. You know, what I mean, you look at it's looking like this shiny new car. I mean, this Ferrari, this sexy looking thing, and then you get it out there, and then next thing you know, it starts sputtering. And you're like, oh, what the heck? They hadn't done a tune up on this thing yet. There's the belt top on it underneath. I'm like, what the world? It's like you got this pretty car and it just can't never run right, and you can never get to the finish line with them. So every year you're hoping that okay, this is gonna be the year, then something else happens. Then it's gonna be the year, then something happens. This gonna be then something else happens. It's just like a car that you know what. When am I gonna trade this thing and quit? Keep hoping that this thing gonna finally run the way I wanted to run it. And that's what the Cowboys are to me. I mean, you look at them, and there's a year every year you can pick them to win their division, and you can have valid reasons why they can win their division. It just something happens, and somebody else ends up with the glory in that division, especially last year. So that's where we'll start at that. By no means, though, are they going to be letting the doorknob of that division. Um, that distinction, unfortunately, like that to me right now, I think because of the rapid fall off of talent and not knowing, as you said, they did nothing on defense, will be the Eagles. You know what I mean? I mean, I think they got a great young quarterback. They got some young targets and some young players in the backfield and the receiver spot. Their offensive line is usually pretty good when they're healthy. Excuse me, when they're healthy. But how are they gonna stop anybody? Who they got back there to stop anybody? Can you name any player on their defense that comes to mind? Not really. And so if they win games, like I said, it'll be 45-42, and that doesn't bode for a spot in the playoffs, or let alone a winning season. So, no, I wish the best to Jalen Hurts. I hope that they give him the chance to develop and the time to develop, and run the offense that will fit him well. So, I'm looking out for him because I like the Eagles as a franchise. So I'm hoping that things work out for him. Oh wow, this New York Giants team though. You look at them; they got a whole bunch of shiny new toys, especially on offense. Um, and you're saying, well, can the quarterback develop to the point will they, be the team? They're in the Big Apple. They got everything that you can need right now. They got all the everything. But will Thomas be the guy at quarterback? Will he be there? If Barkley, I mean, excuse me, not Thomas, Daniel Jones, Daniel Jones. I don't know Thomas. I was thinking tight end for the Western football team. But if Daniel Jones can take the next step or two to become a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback, he's got receiving. They put him in a lot of talent in there. I mean, he's got a great weapon at every position. You got Saquon Barkley in the backfield. You got a great tight ends. You got great wide receivers. They just bought you a all everything tool. So you have no excuses by putting talent around you to do it. And the offensive line is actually even better now. So, and they got decent players on defense. I like what they did on the draft and defense. It's Is that market too big for him? Or is the pressure too great on Daniel Jones to get what they need to do? And can Saquon Barkley stay healthy so he can be that threat out of the backfield so that you can get your passing game going the way you would like to get it going? So, truth be told, it's kind of hard to say anything of good, bad, or indifference about their defense because they were just middle of the road. You knew they got some pieces that you've heard on that defense, but nothing that blows your skirt up. You know what I mean? There's no guy that they say, oh, everybody's got a game plan for this guy on defense. No, there's not. So they're gonna win games probably by just executing. But like I said, everything on there. And if I had to say it, you got to be on the quarterback play because the quarterback play is going to probably build up the confidence of the rest of their roster. They'll probably play above their heads, and that'll see them. And they got a shot to win the division. They got a shot, but it's just going to be how they play on their quarterback plays. And I hate to say it that way, but that's just my opinion on it. And I think that's where it's going to come down to it.
Agreed.
And unfortunately, it seems by default that the Washington football team has the advantage because one thing they out of all the other units, maybe with the Cowboys got elite receivers all across the board.
Yeah.
The Washington football team has an elite defense, especially the front seven. I mean, their corners, you don't know who their corners are because you don't have to know because they don't have to cover but maybe 2.5 seconds. And if you don't get the ball out, you're going to get your head knocked off with that team. And you're not running on them because they built their whole defensive front out of first-round picks that actually made a difference and made an impact. Especially their rookie, Chase Young, defensive rookie of the year. He's a man amongst boys as a boy last year. So can Fitzmagic do it with the retool? They got Samuels and they got a couple of more weapons for him. The key is they got some decent running backs, but there's nobody at there. Will they have somebody emerge to be that top-notch back? Because I think they could win the games just like they did last year, running the ball, doing their screen game, and playing good defense. The problem is, can it be done? If they're not one of those teams that can just beat you. They got to make sure that they don't beat themselves. So this division, and that's why I wanted to do it because it's kind of a crazy, crazy division. I have not seen a division where you got so much averages. That's the good way to say.
That's real though.
It's and it used to not be the way. Think about in the 90s, this was the division to be in. I mean, you got a Super Bowl team was coming out in the 90s and especially in the 80s out of this division. I mean, great. There's some of the greatest teams in NFL history coming out of this division. And then who's the last team to actually make it to the Super Bowl and win it was the Eagles. And unfortunately they've been the best of the best. And then because of basically bad personnel decisions, They dropped to the bottom. They went from being the class of this division to the bottom of the division virtually overnight. So bad personnel moves, bad probably inside of the building moves. People feeling like they deserve more than what they get, paying a guy too early. So many things that took them from being on top of the world to now they're in the outhouse, eating dumpster fire food. So it's. I don't even know if I'm gonna really pay too much attention to this division during the season, except to see who actually gets hot. And the only people unless they get hot, are really gonna get any play will probably be the Cowboys. Obviously New York Giants because they're in New York, but the New York is gonna have to do something to get it. Even in New York, they can actually get some play. The Cowboys gonna get it now because they got the hard knocks that they'll be doing. So, they know how to market themselves. So it'll be interesting to see how this rolls, and hopefully we won't have another year of mediocrity out of this division. Maybe we'll have somebody actually be a lead out of this
Agreed.
division. Well, my friend, we did another good show. I mean, by the way, I did want. We were talking about some people that on there that we wanted to see out of that we didn't talk about. The name I was trying to think of was Willie McGinnis. Willie McGinnis is the all-time sack leader in the history of the Super Bowl. Obviously he's been to like 5 or 6 of them, but still was a great player. Another great player who's not getting any play for Hall of Fame was also Teddy Bruschi. And then the other one, the great Richard Seymour. So those are 3 guys that when the team wasn't led by Brady, people forget the 2001 Super Bowl wasn't won by Brady. He had a great last drive, but the defense won that game. The defense won the other game against the Carolina Panthers. And then even the Philadelphia Eagles here in Jacksonville, the defense made those stops, toward the end of the games and then throughout the game for them to get that. So a lot of these games, and if you look at the Super Bowls kind of that they lost so far, is because those were the games Brady didn't do to. Actually, Brady put up more numbers and they didn't have any help on defense, or the defense of the other team just totally shut down, because you could actually say the reasoning that, the game, they were even in those games with the Giants on those 2 Super Bowls that lost because the Patriots defense kept them in that game. You know what I mean? Outside of a crazy play by Eli Manning and a helmet catch, they won another Super Bowl because of the way the defense played that game. You know what I mean? But it was the final score, 17-10, and that when they were supposed to be perfect. So it's just. Those players get overlooked by the great Tom Brady on that team, but their defense is one of the reasons they got to all of those Super Bowls. They always usually at the top of the heap, no matter what era there is in defense in the NFL. So that's one of the reasons why they're there. So, and those 3 guys that should be in there. But other than that, my friend, we had another good show. Once again, folks, if you like our content, please hit that like button. Also, subscribe to our channel. And lastly, please hit up my friends at She-Car, Watch Game Film, Team Sportswear Red, where you can get all your sports apparel. You can get customized gear. People over at the great folks and teams that we have with the Women's Tackle Football League, the Laces Out Foundation, who does tremendous jobs for young ladies in football, running camps all over the country. And lastly, but not leastly being said, the DEMP Project, who does a wonderful job at helping eradicate sex slavery, and especially in the North Florida area. And please look them up and do what you can to support those organizations. And once again, I'd like to thank my illustrious co-host, Andre L. Sullivan, our great producer, Granville Moody Fowler. Until next week, we'll be right back here on this same channel, and we wish you all the best of luck and stay safe and be healthy out there. And see you next week once again right here on the Terry McGriff Show.